What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we're going to be taking you through my Warlock versions of some dusty dungeon destroyers with these two builds that get me through all three encounters with ease through the Vespers host. Can go through really any type of dungeon content, endgame content with these builds. So we're going to go over the exotics that I'm using as well as the two different versions of the builds. So strap on in for a Warlock build guide for y'all that is going to survive you some dungeons and DPS some bosses. So first off, we got ourselves that Dawn Chorus right here. Rites of Ember. Your Daybreak projectiles deal more damage and scorch targets on impact. Your scorch is improved and you gain a small amount of melee energy when you scorch damage those targets. So for us, we're really using this to do more damage with the scorch, really get those explosions going on with our Song of Flame. For sure going to be using that to stay alive. Use that little bird and our incinerator snap during the first and the second encounter. The first encounter you could use Dawnblade if you would like, but I personally think the Prismatic subclass that I'm going to show is better off. Now the other helmet that we're going to be using for that final encounter with the good old puppeteer is the Lost Voice in the Speaker Sight. The healing grenades spawn a restorative turret. Healing allies occasionally spawns an orb of power, which is nice for getting our super for that, for having that well up, so we can just juice the DPS in one spot where we don't have to actually worry about running around and dodging those lightning strikes, etc. So very good little combination of using the Dawn Chorus in the first two encounters with that Song of Flame for staying alive in the Prismatic subclass, and then we got the Speaker's Sight as well as that Solar subclass and the Well of Radiance actually for the final boss. So first off, right here, we got ourselves our Prismatic Warlock with the Song of Flame, like I said, using that snap as well as this super to create a bunch of that scorch for our Dawn Chorus to take over. For me, I'm using Phoenix Dive with the Burst Glide. You can use whatever you would like. Incinerator Snap for sure, so we can spread that scorch even better. We're going to be using this because it's the lowest cooldown for Helion, which gives us that little Solar Mortar, which also helps us to proc the Dawn Chorus and that scorch explosions. I'm going to be using Vortex Grenade because of this down here and getting weakening on that. It feels just right, especially for that servitor boss, and then we can turn that into a Bleak Watcher turret as well, so we can get darkness debuffs on enemies, which is super nice for some of the fragments that we're using. So Facet of Devotion is one of our first ones. Targets that are stasis debuffed for us, we will gain that light transcendent energy, so we're going to get transcendent with this build also very quickly. Now Awakening right here, rapidly defeating targets with light, darkness, or super final blows to generate elemental pickups. So we're going to create void, solar, and stasis elemental pickups with this. So that helps us very much as well with getting back some of our abilities. Facet of Courage, Arc, Solar, Void abilities do increase damage against those with darkness debuffs. So it's going to be nice to have that Bleak Watcher out there. So our Void and Incinerator Snap as well as our super is going to do more damage against that darkness debuffed target. Like I said, right here, this dominance is going to help us to have that weaken on targets with the Vortex Grenade right there. Super good for that boss DPS. Facet of Ruin helps us again with the Solar Ignitions. Pairing that with the Dawn Chorus allows for some pretty crazy combination of DPS and survivability with the super in both of those first two encounters for that Vespers radius. And then the final one is the Facet of Hope. Well, we have an elemental buff. Our class ability comes back more quickly, just so we can get Phoenix Dive back and get Helion procced basically continuously, having that Scorch go on all the time with a little bit of healing. So for the mods as well as the stats that we're building out, we got Resilience and Recovery as our number 1, with Discipline, Strength as our number 2s. With having this Dawn Chorus on, we're going to be using Heavy Ammo Finder to have our grenade launchers up. Harmonic Siphon, just because of the weapons that we're going to be using. Bolstering Detonation, we're going to get our class ability back when we do damage with both of our weapons, as well as, our abilities, not our weapons, so melee and grenade. And then we're also going to be able to get our grenade down when we get our powered melee attack, so nice little positive feedback loop there. For me, this dungeon, arc resistance as well as void resistance, super important for those encounters. Now for me, I went with solar weapon surge just for our hand cannon. You can switch this on and off depending on the encounter that you are on, but I also like having time dilation on as well as Reaper to create more orbs of power, and then just so we can keep up the time dilation and that extra DPS. So when we move on to the solar subclass, we're going to be using that Well of Radiance for survivability on that final boss. A Phoenix Dive once again. Balance Glide with Celestial Fire, since that boss is pretty far out there. Easy to get those melee hits with this, with of course the Healing Grenade for that Speaker Sight Helm. Now we're going to be using Healing once again with Touch of Flame, so we can get a little extra oomph on those healing grenades, as well as the healing and getting that Scorch to spread around. Ember of Solace, Radiant Restoration, has a longer effect, so we're going to keep those allies alive, like I said, part of this build. Ember of Ashes, apply more Scorch stacks to those targets. Ember of Searing, helping to create fire sprites, even more of them, so we can get a little bit of our melee back when we grab them, as well as to proc that restoration on us, as well as when we revive a teammate. So very good little combination, keeping everybody alive with all of these, as well as that healing grenade and the Speaker Sight Helm. Now onto our stats and mods with this bad boy. Resilience, Recovery, Discipline, all number ones with that 100 on these stats. We got ourselves the Speaker Sight, like I said, for this, with the Harmonic Siphon once again for that solar, as well as Heavy Ammo Finder, Special Ammo Finder, so we can keep our Mountaintop up, as well as our Anarchy, the way that I'm using it, because our artifact will be exactly the same. We're going to be using that Concussive Dampener to weaken targets. We're going to have Impact Induction on this with Kinetic Loader and Fastball. You could switch this out, if I'm being completely honest, with double Kinetic Loader, so that Mountaintop is just juicy fast. We got triple arc resistance for that final encounter of the Vespers Host dungeon, with arc weapon surge for us, as well as that arc holster, so our Anarchy is going to reload itself. You can use the same thing if you're using Grand Overture. Bomber right here, double on that with Reaper, so we can create some more orbs of power, as well as keeping that class item up with the Speaker's Helm and throwing our grenade around. Super nice little combination. Now when we move on to weapon options, for that final boss with the Speaker Sight, I'm going to be using Mountaintop with the Apothecary integration, as well as Anarchy for that final one. Very easy to keep up the DPS with Anarchy, as well as Mountaintop to get our artifacts to proc, so your other teammates with you can do some really juicy DPS with some other combinations of weapons. Now for the other combinations that I'm using, mostly is the Lost Signal, with having either on the first encounter with the Briggs, I use this Chill Inhibitor, as well as the Sunshot. Very good combination right here, with specifically it would be with this Dawn Chorus side of things. And then the second encounter with the Servitor, all we do is really switch out the Apothecary integration and Sunshot, and then the Parasite and Chill Inhibitor. This right here gets us through the Servitor side of things, so very good weapon options. You can really switch out this for any type of weapon you would like. I just like on this build having Incandescent for sure to help with the Dawn Chorus side of things. Now last but certainly not least, this right here is going to be the exact same for both of those builds that we're using in the Apothecary Satchel. Mostly for these three down here, we can get some of this to proc up with the Stasis Freezes, etc. like this. With a Frozen Combatant, there's going to be a slow around them when we throw out our Stasis turrets. Shattering those Stasis Crystals releases a slow for us, going to be able to get that as well to proc. Frost Armor, not as much with this build unless we are using one of those Stasis weapons for precision hits, so that's why I have all of these on, but mostly for Brain Freeze and Hailstorm on this build, but more specifically that Kinetic Tremors impact right here that we're basically getting on our Anarchy. Super nice with that Power Grenade Launcher continuous damage, which is happening with the Anarchy consistently. Same thing, we're getting this to proc as well with Concussive Reloader. Grenade launchers damage the boss champion or break a combatant shield weakens them, so this is going to be with the Anarchy as well as the Mountaintop to keep that up for our fellow Guardians. And then Rapid Impacts right here, grenade launchers increase that reload speed, which is also nice for keeping damage up on that final boss. Like you can see here, nobody is going to get into any sort of trouble until the well is gone, and then you can kind of follow your teammates around, throwing that speaker's grenade, that healing grenade turret around so it keeps everybody alive. It won't save somebody from one of those big blasts from the lightning, but with all the arc going around with that boss and his clones going around, you can help keep them alive from that, because the damage is real, especially with the AoE effects of that lightning. But this is where I go, at least for DPS, is on this little tank up here. Very good little combination of AoE protection, plus keeps you away from the melees of some of the boss clones that are running around you, and you all have a good little footing to do DPS up here on that boss no matter what platform he is on. So that's how I do it. Use my Anarchy to get that stuff to proc, use Mountaintop to continually do it. Very good little combination in my opinion. Anyways, I really personally like Mountaintop in this encounter just in general. But again, appreciate all you guys for coming back to the channel. Means a lot to me, means a lot to the channel if you like and subscribe as well. Helps out the algorithm, helps out the channel in general. Plus we got a lot more builds to come your way, a lot more god roll guides to come your way. We're going to do a little dungeon guides with all the secrets, tips, and tricks that I have learned over the time going through this so far, getting you guys these builds to get you some dungeon clears as well. Very, very fun. So I appreciate you guys once again for coming back. As always, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.